Welcome to Shadow Fear. Today, we're venturing deep into the heart of 8 most disturbing true trucker horror stories. From eerie lights haunting lonely highways to unseen forces that stalk the open road, get ready for 8 chilling tales that will make you question what's real and what's waiting just beyond the next bend. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing. And by doing so, they miss out on the creepiest spine-tingling stories that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now because tonight's just the beginning, and the terror rolling down these roads is far from over, so where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments because here the night is only getting darker, and the horror is waiting to unfold. Now let's dive into the darkness. I've been driving trucks for over 20 years now, and I can tell you this. Every driver has a stretch of road that haunts them. For some, it's where they almost fell asleep at the wheel. For others, it's where they saw something they still can't explain. For me, that place is mile marker 187 off Highway 45, somewhere between Dallas and Houston. I don't even like saying the number out loud anymore. The company still routes drivers that way sometimes, but I always find a reason to take the long route. I can't go back there. Not after what happened that week. It started on a Tuesday night about 3 years ago. I was hauling refrigerated freight down to Houston, an overnight run I'd done dozens of times. My partner Eddie was asleep in the back. The radio was low, just static and faint chatter from other rigs. I remember the fog rolling in thick like someone had poured milk across the road. My high beams just bounced off it, so I kept my eyes glued on the right line to stay centered. That's when I saw him. He was standing on the shoulder, thin, hunched over, wearing a torn denim jacket. He had a cardboard sign in his hands that just said home in big black letters. I almost didn't notice him until I was close enough to make out the details. For a split second he turned his head toward me, and even through the fog I could see his eyes. They looked wrong, not glowing or anything, just empty. Like he was looking through me. I remember thinking, who the hell hitchhikes out here at midnight? I drove past and looked at my mirrors. For a moment I could have sworn he stepped toward the road, but maybe that was just the fog shifting. The next night, same run. I didn't even think about it at first. But as I got closer to that stretch again, the fog returned, thick as before. And sure enough, right there by the same mile marker, he was back. Same jacket, same sign, same exact spot. I slowed down this time, leaning toward the window to get a better look. He didn't move. Didn't even blink. Just stood there like he'd been waiting for me. When I told Eddie about it later at the truck stop, he laughed. Maybe he's a ghost, he said, grinning. Yeah, maybe, I replied, trying to sound casual, but something about it stuck with me. I barely slept that night. By the third night, I told myself I was going to prove it was just some guy playing games. Maybe a homeless drifter or a prankster who knew the trucker's routes. It was around 1 a.m. The fog started earlier than usual, curling around the trees and the asphalt. I gripped the wheel tighter as my headlights hit the marker sign. 27, and there he was. Again. But this time he was standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching against wet pavement. My heart jumped into my throat. I could see him clearly now, same jacket but soaked this time, water dripping from his sleeves. His face was pale, gray almost, like he hadn't seen the sun in years. Jesus Christ, I muttered, grabbing the air horn and blaring it. He didn't move. I was about to hit the gas and go around when he lifted his head slowly, like it took effort. And then in a low, broken voice that somehow carried through the noise of the engine, he said, "You missed the turn again." I froze. "What?" I whispered, even though he couldn't hear me. He stepped closer, one boot dragging like it was too heavy. Then blink and he was gone. Just like that. The road was empty again. Eddie woke up from the commotion and climbed up front. "Dude, what the hell happened?" I just stared at the windshield, shaking. There was a guy. Right there. He said I missed the turn. Eddie rubbed his eyes and looked around. "Man, you need sleep. There's no one out here." I didn't answer. I just drove. The next day I called dispatch and told them something weird was going on at that stretch. The woman on the line sighed. "You must be talking about mile marker 187 again," she said. "Again?" I asked. "Yeah. You're not the first driver to report strange stuff there. Lights, people standing on the road, radios cutting out. But there's nothing there. The cops have checked it. She paused, then added, "If it bothers you, we can reroute you next time." That should have been the end of it. But for some reason I couldn't stop thinking about what that hitchhiker said. "You missed the turn again. What turn?" A few nights later, Eddie and I took a different load north. Different highway. No fog, no hitchhiker. For the first time all week, I felt normal again. But halfway through the night, our CB crackled to life with a burst of static. Breaker 19. "You out there, Hank?" It was a man's voice. Deep flat, Eddie leaned forward. "Who's that?" "I don't know," I said. "But how does he know my name?" The radio hissed again. "You missed the turn again, Hank. I swear to God, both of us froze solid." Eddie's face went white. "Turn it off," he whispered. I did. I shut it off, then pulled over to the side of the road. We sat there for a full minute, listening to the sound of the engine ticking and our own breathing. That night, Eddie refused to sleep in the truck. He got a motel room. I don't blame him. A week passed. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe some other driver overheard us talking on the radio and decided to mess with me. Maybe the fog and the night just got in my head. But then one morning, after dropping off a load, I found a folded piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. It was damp, written in shaky handwriting that looked like it had been done with a marker that was running out of ink. It said, "You can't keep missing the turn. No name." No number plate, nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it all, his voice, the fog, the sign. Home. What home? I finally decided to look it up. That stretch of highway used to run parallel to an old river before they built a new bridge. About 12 years ago, a truck went over the edge during a storm. The driver drowned before rescue could reach him. His name was Henry Lawson. My name is Hank Lawson. I sat there staring at the article, the coffee growing cold in my hand. Same initials, same route, same company. Even drove the same make of truck. I didn't sleep for 2 days. A month later, I got assigned to Houston Run again. The same route. I tried to refuse it, but we were short on drivers and they needed someone. Against my better judgment, I said yes. The fog started even before I hit the county line. My hands were slick on the wheel, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the hum of the tires. The clock read 12:43 a.m. When the green, reflective 187 sign appeared, my stomach dropped. The fog got so thick I could barely see 5 feet ahead. And then I saw the outline. Not one man this time, two, standing side by side, both holding the same cardboard sign, home. My truck slowed on its own, engine sputtering like it was choking. I reached for the CB to call for help, but all I got was static, then my own voice playing back through it. "You missed the turn again." I felt something cold behind me, like a wet hand on my shoulder. I turned, no one there. But in the side mirror, for a brief, impossible second, I saw another cab driving right beside mine. Same color, same company logo, and behind the wheel. Me eyes open, mouth moving, repeating the same words I'd heard every night. "You missed the turn again." I woke up on the shoulder, truck idling, morning sunlight burning through the fog. The highway patrol said they found me unconscious, no crash, no damage. Just parked. They said I must have fallen asleep. Maybe that's true. I don't know anymore. But when I checked my dashboard camera, it was gone. Just static, except for one clear frame. A man standing by the road, soaked, staring into the lens, same face as mine. I quit long-haul driving a few months later. I still work local runs, nothing overnight. And when I map my routes, I make damn sure they never go near that part of I-45. Sometimes when I'm flipping through channels at night, I'll hear faint static, and for a second I could swear someone's trying to reach me through the noise. Breaker 19. You missed the turn again. I always turn it off, because deep down I know what's waiting for me if I ever go back, and I don't think I'd come home the next time. I've been a long-haul truck driver for 11 years, and I can tell you, the CB radio can feel like both your best friend and your worst enemy out there. When you're driving for hours through nothing but blacktop, desert, and distant lights that never seem to get closer, those little bursts of chatter from other truckers can keep you sane. They're like proof that someone else is awake with you in the dark. But sometimes, that same crackle in the speakers reminds you you're not as alone as you thought, and that's not always a comfort. This story happened 4 years ago, somewhere between Midland and El Paso, Texas. I was hauling a freezer unit loaded with packaged meat for a delivery at dawn. It was a quiet night. No storms, no traffic, just the endless hum of tires on asphalt. The desert around me looked flat and lifeless, the kind of place where even ghosts would get bored. It started a little after midnight. I had my CB radio set to channel 19, the one most drivers use to chat or share warnings about roadblocks and speed traps. I wasn't really listening closely when it came through. Just static at first, then a voice. Breaker 19. Anyone got a copy? Something about the tone caught my ear. It was low and flat, but calm. Almost too calm. It sounded like someone trying hard not to sound scared. I picked up the mic out of habit. Yeah, this is Bluebird. What's up, driver? That was my handle back then. Most truckers have one. There was a pause, then the man said, I need a little help out here. The rig broke down near exit 42. Ain't seen another soul for miles. His voice was muffled, buried under static. It sounded old, like an old CB mic that had been sitting in a glove box for years. Copy that, I said. Are you stranded on the shoulder? I can pull over when I hit 42. What are you hauling? Another pause. Then, frozen goods. That was all he said. I asked for his name, but the radio just crackled again like wind blowing through dead wires. Then silence. About 15 minutes later, I reached exit 42. It was one of those isolated exits that leads to nowhere. Just a short ramp, a bit of gravel, and a sign half buried in sand. But I slowed down anyway, scanning the road. No truck. No lights, no tire tracks. The only sound was my own engine and the wind. I pulled over for a minute, thinking maybe I'd missed him. I even climbed out with my flashlight, walking a few feet down the ramp. The air smelled like dust and old oil. Then faintly, I heard something behind me, like a CB transmission echoing in the distance. Just a single phrase, almost lost in static. Thanks for stopping. I spun around, scanning the road. But there was no one, nothing. I got back in my cab, shut the door, and told myself I was just tired. I still had 4 hours of road left, and sometimes your brain plays tricks when it's half asleep. When I hit the next truck stop, I parked beside a few other rigs and went inside to grab coffee. It was one of those old flickering light diners where the waitress calls everyone "un." There were maybe 5 drivers in there, all older guys who looked like they'd been driving since the 70s. While I was paying, I mentioned to the cashier just offhand that I thought I'd picked up a stranded driver on 19. I said something like, "Weird thing, a guy said he broke down on exit 42, but I didn't see a truck." One of the older drivers looked up from his seat. Big guy, beard down to his chest, denim vest full of patches. He stared at me for a moment, then said quietly, "You didn't answer him, did you?" I frowned. "Answer who?" He set down his coffee. Channel 19 near exit 42. That was Jimmy Rakes. The name didn't mean anything to me, but the way he said it made my skin crawl. I laughed nervously. "You know him?" He nodded slowly. "Knew him. He's been dead 15 years. The whole diner went quiet. Even the waitress stopped moving." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Jimmy burned up in a pileup near exit 42. Freak chain reaction. Tanker went up first. Fire burned so hot it melted the road. They never even found his mic. Just the shell of the cab and a twisted CB antenna. I tried to play it off, but my mouth was dry. Could have been another guy, I said. Common handle, maybe?" He just shook his head. "Nah, that stretch has been dead air for years. Only one voice comes through on 19 out there. And it ain't alive." I got back in my rig feeling like someone had poured ice water down my spine. I told myself it was nonsense. Truckers love ghost stories. You spend enough nights alone on the road, your mind starts building monsters in the fog. I tried to ignore it. But as I pulled out of the lot, my CB crackled again, so soft I almost missed it. Breaker 19. The same flat tone, the same slight drag on the words. I didn't answer. "Anyone got a copy?" I reached over and turned the dial to another channel. Nothing but static. When I switched back to 19, silence. Still, the air in the cab felt heavier, like someone else was breathing beside me. By 3 a.m., the desert was empty again. The fog had started to creep in low, curling over the asphalt. I kept glancing at the passenger seat even though I knew it was empty. And then, without warning, the CB came alive. Loud this time, clear as day. Breaker 19. "Thanks for stopping, Claire." My blood went cold. I slammed the radio off, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I hadn't told anyone my name, not even that old guy at the diner. My hands shook on the wheel. I remember whispering to myself, "It's a prank. Someone's messing with you. That's when my mic clicked on by itself. You know that sound it makes when you press the talk button? That little click hiss? It did that. Twice. Then my own voice came through the speaker. Anytime, Jimmy. I don't even remember saying it. My lips moved on their own. It felt like something cold slid down my throat, pulling the words out of me. Then, silence. I pulled over and sat there shaking for a long time, staring at the dead CB. The desert around me was pitch black, no cars, no lights, nothing. The only sound was the freezer unit humming behind me. When I finally made it to El Paso, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was still riding with me. Every time I looked in the side mirror, I thought I saw a flicker of orange light, like a reflection of fire. When I parked to unload, the delivery guy joked that my trailer smelled like smoke. I didn't laugh. I didn't use the CB for a few days after that. But truckers don't stay silent for long. A few runs later, on a clear night, I switched it back on. I told myself I needed to stop being paranoid. For a while it was fine, just the usual chatter. Guys talking about the weather, speed traps, music. Then, somewhere near the outskirts of Pecos, I caught a fragment of a conversation. "Bluebird, this is Jimmy. Are you out there?" I froze. Bluebird wasn't my handle anymore. I changed it a year ago, but that was my old name. "You missed me last run." "Claire," the voice said. I yanked the mic cord out of the radio so hard I nearly ripped it from the console. I tried to tell myself the transmission was bleeding from some other channel. That can happen sometimes when two frequencies overlap. But deep down I knew better. CB radios don't call you by name, and they sure as hell don't use voices that belong to the dead. That night I stayed at a rest stop instead of finishing my route. I parked between two other trucks, engine off, doors locked. Around 2 a.m. I woke up to the faint sound of static again. Not from the radio, it was coming from outside. I sat up and peered through the windshield. Across the lot, a semi was parked with its headlights off, engine running. The cab door opened on its own and a figure climbed out, just a shadow lit by the dashboard glow. He walked a few steps into the fog, then stopped. I couldn't make out his face, but he turned toward me. Slowly. And then my CB, still unplugged, hissed back to life. "Breaker 19, thanks for stopping, Claire." I hit the ignition and tore out of that rest stop so fast I nearly blew a tire. Didn't even check my mirrors. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted distance. The next morning, I called the company and told them my CB had shorted out, that I needed a new unit. They replaced it without question. The old one? I smashed it to pieces and left it in a dumpster behind a diner in Las Cruces. But here's the thing. Even after I got the new radio, the interference never really went away. Every now and then, usually past midnight, I'll get a faint crackle on channel 19. Just a whisper through the static. Sometimes it's a man's voice. Sometimes it's mine. And once, just last month, I swear I heard it again, clear as ever. "Breaker 19, thanks for stopping, Claire." I didn't answer. I turned the radio off and drove the rest of the night in silence. But the funny thing is, when I checked my delivery log the next morning, I noticed something strange. The system said I'd made a stop at exit 42. There's no record of it. No GPS ping, no fuel charge, nothing. Just a single line entry. 01:12 a.m., channel 19. Sometimes when I think about that night, I wonder if the road itself remembers. If all that pain and fire can burn a voice so deep into the airwaves that it never really fades. I still drive nights. Still alone most of the time. And I still keep my CB turned off after midnight. Because I know if I leave it on long enough, I'll hear him again. And next time, I don't think he'll just be thanking me. You learn a few things when you've been a trucker long enough. You learn the sound your rig makes when it's happy, the vibration of the tires when the road is smooth, and the rhythm of the radio static that keeps you from going crazy somewhere around hour 7. But most of all, you learn when something isn't right. That feeling started before I even left the lot. It was a Thursday afternoon, July of 2019, and I had a rush order leaving Phoenix headed for a facility outside Amarillo. They called it a medical shipment. That usually meant refrigerated samples, blood, tissue, vaccines, that sort of thing. I'd hauled stuff like that before and it always paid well. Still, the guy at the loading dock gave me a weird vibe. He wasn't wearing any uniform, just a plain gray jumpsuit. No name tag, no clipboard. He handed me a load sheet stamped, "Property of Red Lake Research Division." and told me to keep the trailer temperature locked at 10 degrees Celsius. That wasn't unusual, but what was strange was how nervous he looked. When I asked what was in the shipment, he just said, "You don't want to know, driver. Just keep it cold." The truck felt heavier than usual as I pulled onto I-40. 8 crates in the back, each one solid metal about the size of a dog kennel. No labels, no hazard signs. Just those words printed on every side, "Do not open." The first 3 hours were uneventful. Desert sun beating down, country radio on low, and the reefer humming steady behind me. Around midnight, I stopped for fuel near Gallup, New Mexico. That's when I noticed the temperature gauge on the reefer control flicker. 10. Oh, sick. Back to 10 again. I'd seen faulty gauges before, usually just loose wiring. But as I stood there watching it, I swear I could feel a faint vibration through the trailer floor, like something shifting inside. When I mentioned it to another trucker fueling beside me, an older guy named Pete, he shrugged. "Probably compressors cycling," he said. "Those reefers hum like they're alive sometimes." Yeah, he didn't know how right he was. I hit the road again around 1:30 a.m. The desert was black, the sky so full of stars it looked fake. My high beams barely touched the horizon. Somewhere past the state line, the temperature alarm went off. A shrill, piercing beep that jolted me out of a half-doze. The gauge read 2 degrees. The unit was warming up fast. I pulled onto the shoulder and climbed out, the dry wind whipping across the sand. The reefer door rattled softly, as if something inside was pressing against it. I grabbed a wrench, opened the control panel, and checked the compressor. Everything looked fine. No leaks, no frost buildup. But the hum from inside the trailer had changed. It was higher, like a vibration running through metal. Then I heard it. A knock, just one, dull and distant. I froze, listening. Then it came again. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I stepped back instinctively. "Hey!" I called out, half expecting someone to answer. Nothing. Just wind and static from my CB crackling faintly in the cab. When I opened the trailer doors, a rush of cold air spilled out so thick it felt like fog. My breath turned white in front of me. The crates sat lined up perfectly, the metal glistening under my flashlight. Each one had a small red light glowing near its latch and faint frost creeping along the seams. Then, another knock. This time from the far end. One of the crates shuddered violently. Frost sprayed across the floor as if something inside had slammed against the wall. Every instinct told me to shut the doors and drive. But curiosity's a dangerous thing on the road. It kills the loneliness for a while, gives you something to focus on. I walked closer. The metal of the floor was freezing against my boots. The air temperature was dropping by the second. I could feel it biting through my jacket. The crate was labeled RL07. Below that, the familiar warning, "Do not open." Property of Red Lake Research Division. A small tag dangled from the latch with initials scribbled in black marker. JK, I don't know why, but that made it worse. Like these weren't just cargo, they were something once human. Then came a soft sound from inside. Not knocking this time, breathing, shallow, slow, wet, like someone inhaling through ice. I stumbled backward, dropped the flashlight, and it rolled under the trailer wall, the beam flickering across the crate's side. For just a moment, I saw a handprint appear on the metal, 5 fingers pressing from the inside. Frost spread from where the palm touched. That's when I made the worst decision of my life. I unlatched the lock. It hissed, as if pressure released. The temperature gauge outside the trailer jumped 5 degrees instantly. When I lifted the lid, a burst of white vapor erupted out, stinging my eyes. Inside was clear ice, but not like you'd see in a freezer. It was glass smooth, faintly glowing from the refrigeration lights above. And inside that ice, a face, humans. Pale blue skin stretched thin, eyes half open. They weren't dead eyes. They were moving, blinking. I stumbled backward so hard I hit another crate, my flashlight clattering across the floor. I stared as the face twitched, bubbles forming behind the frozen surface like it was trying to breathe. Then I saw something worse. The mouth moved. And through the hum of the reefer I heard a sound faint and muffled. Cold. "Help me!" I slammed the lid shut, heart pounding, and bolted for the cab. My fingers shook so badly I could barely start the engine. As I shifted into gear, I heard a thud, then another. By the time I hit the gas, every crate in that trailer was shaking. I drove for 2 hours straight, not daring to look in the mirrors. When I finally hit a rest area, I parked, turned off the reefer unit, and just sat there, sweating in the desert heat but still feeling cold in my bones. I tried calling dispatch, but the line kept dropping. When I finally got through, I told them I was having a temperature malfunction. They told me not to open the trailer under any circumstances and to drive straight to the Amarillo drop-off. When I asked who Red Lake Research Division was, the line went dead. By sunrise, the gauge was flatlined. 0 degrees C. The hum had stopped. Against my better judgment, I checked the trailer one last time before heading out. When I opened the doors, it wasn't cold anymore. The air that came out was warm like body heat, and the crates were all still. But one was missing, number RL07. The floor was wet, streaked with condensation and muddy footprints that led halfway down the ramp and just stopped. No sign of anything else. I stood there for a long minute, staring into the heat-shimmering desert. Nothing moved except a vulture circling overhead. I closed the doors, locked them, and didn't stop again until Amarillo. When I got there, the receiving warehouse was wrong. It wasn't a lab or a research center. It was an abandoned meat processing plant with no signage. The windows were boarded up, and the only thing marking it was a faded stencil on the door that read, RLRD, Authorized Entry Only. A man in a white coat stepped out as I pulled in. His badge didn't have a name, just the Red Lake logo. He waved me back up to Dock 3, clipboard in hand. "You opened one, didn't you?" he asked immediately. I froze. "No, I checked the load when the unit failed, that's all." He smiled thinly, like he didn't believe me. "If one's missing, you should tell us now." I shook my head. "It was gone when I checked this morning." He scribbled something on his clipboard, then turned to the men waiting by the dock, 2 of them in biohazard suits. "Unload what's left," he said. "We'll take it from here." I didn't wait for the paperwork. I drove off as soon as they finished, leaving my trailer behind. That night I got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was soft, distorted, like it was underwater. "You shouldn't have opened it, Jake." I hung up immediately, my heart thudding in my ears. When I called the company, they said the Red Lake shipment didn't exist. No record of it. No delivery logs, no invoice. When I pushed further, they told me to take a month off, paid, and that they'd handle everything. When I returned to work, my old trailer was gone. Replaced with a newer model. Nobody mentioned it again. A few months later, I was fueling up in Arizona when a highway patrol officer walked up and asked if I'd seen an abandoned reefer unit near Route 380. Said it had been found idling on the shoulder. Doors open, interior coated in frost. The weird part? It was over 90 degrees out that day. He showed me a photo on his phone. It was my old rig. I quit long-haul runs not long after. The company still calls sometimes asking if I'll come back, but I always tell them no. I stay local now. Short deliveries. Never anything refrigerated. Sometimes when I drive past a cold storage warehouse, I'll hear a faint hum, like a compressor starting up. And if I listen long enough beneath the noise of the engine and the wind, I swear I can still hear it. A slow, rhythmic knock coming from behind me. If you've spent enough years on the road, you know there are places that just don't feel right. Every trucker's got their list. Those rest stops, diners, and service stations that look normal at first glance, but make your skin crawl the second you pull in. Places where the air feels heavier, like the world is holding its breath. For me, that place is Rest Stop 23, somewhere along I-10 between San Antonio and El Paso. At least, that's what the sign said the night I found it. The problem is, I've never been able to find it again. It was late, probably close to 2:30 a.m., and I'd been driving close to 13 hours straight. I was hauling construction equipment to Tucson, bone-tired and running on caffeine fumes. My GPS showed a rest area about 10 miles ahead. I remember the blue sign clearly. Rest Stop 22, 10 miles. But I must have zoned out because when I looked again, my GPS said I'd passed it. No big deal, I thought. There's always another one ahead. And sure enough, a few minutes later, a glowing sign appeared out of the dark. Rest Stop 23. Next right. I figured it must have been a newer one that hadn't been added to the GPS yet. Happens sometimes on these long routes. The exit ramp was narrow and twisted. The asphalt cracked like old skin. As soon as I turned off the highway, my headlights hit a chain link fence half collapsed under weeds. Beyond it, the parking lot appeared, empty except for a single pickup truck with no plates. The lights flickered above the lot, humming with that dull, sickly yellow glow that makes everything look jaundiced. There was a small building with restrooms and vending machines, the kind of place that's supposed to make you feel safe but somehow doesn't. I parked my rig and killed the engine. The silence hit immediately. No insects, no wind, just that hum from the lights and the faint buzz from the vending machines. Inside, the air was stale, not dirty exactly, just old. The tile was cracked, the fluorescent bulbs stuttered overhead, and the smell of disinfectant was faint but sharp. The kind of smell that tries too hard to cover something worse. There were 2 doors, one for men, one for women. I went into the men's room. Every stall was closed except one. The lights above it flickered more than the others, and for a second I thought I saw movement underneath, like someone shifting their feet. "Anyone in here?" I called out. No answer. I stepped up to the sink to splash water on my face. That's when I saw it, scratched into the mirror in shaky, deep letters. "You can leave when someone else stops." I laughed under my breath, trying to brush it off as graffiti. Some weird jokes, but when I leaned closer, I realized something that made my stomach tighten. The words weren't written on the mirror. They were carved from behind, like someone had etched them on the reflective layer itself before reassembling it. The sound behind me made me spin around. The toilet flushed, but every stall was still closed. Then another flush, then another. The noise echoed too long, like it was coming from farther away than the room itself. I backed toward the door, my hand already on the handle when the lights flickered once more. And for a split second, I saw something in the mirror, a man standing behind me. He was pale, wet-looking like he'd just come in from the rain, but his eyes weren't focused on me. He was looking toward the stalls. When I turned around, the bathroom was empty again. I bolted outside, heart hammering. The parking lot looked darker than before. The overhead lights were dimming one by one, like something was sucking the power out of them. I climbed into my cab, slammed the door, and jammed the keys into the ignition. But when I turned it, nothing. Dead. I tried again. Nothing, not even the click of the starter. That's when I realized the keys felt wrong, heavier. When I looked down, I saw they weren't mine. The ring was rusted, the fob cracked, with a tag that read M. Harlan, Unit 23. I froze, the silence pressing in so heavy it felt like cotton in my ears. Then I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Headlights appeared on the access road, another semi pulling in. I grabbed my flashlight and tried waving, shouting out the window. My voice felt small, swallowed by the night. But the other rig didn't slow down. It rolled into the lot, parking right next to mine. I jumped out, relief flooding me. "Hey, you scared the hell out of me, man," I called. The driver's door opened slowly. A man stepped out. Older, gray stubble, worn leather jacket. He squinted at me through the flickering light. "You all right there, buddy?" "Yeah," I said, laughing nervously. "Truck's dead. Think the battery might have—" Before I could finish, the bathroom light behind him flickered. He turned his head toward it. "Did you go in there?" "Yeah," I said. "Why?" His face changed. "You shouldn't have." Before I could ask what he meant, the lights above us cut out completely. The only illumination left was the pale glow of the vending machines through the building windows. We both turned at the same time and saw movement inside. Someone was standing in front of the mirror. At least that's what it looked like. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized it wasn't a person. It was a reflection, only there was no one in front of it. The reflection turned its head toward us. The other trucker whispered, "We need to go, now." He bolted for his rig, fumbling with his keys. I did the same, but when I opened my door, my cab light flickered, and the seat was wet. Water pooled on the floor, soaking through the mat. I touched it, and it was freezing cold. When I looked up, my windshield had fogged over, and from the inside, a single sentence appeared. Written in the condensation, "Your turn." I jumped out again, gasping, spinning toward the other trucker. His engine was running now, headlights on, cab shaking. "Let's go," I yelled, running toward him, but as I reached his rig, the lights in the restroom building flared bright, then went black, and his truck went silent. The engine cut off mid-rev, leaving nothing but the faint echo of air brakes, and then stillness. "Hey," I shouted, banging on his door. "You okay?" No answer. I pulled the handle open and then no one was inside. Not a trace of him, not a sound. Just the faint smell of diesel and something damp like old water. That's when the bathroom door creaked open again. I turned, flashlight trembling in my hand. The door swung wide, but there was no wind. No movement, and from inside, faint as a breath, "You can leave when someone else stops." I didn't think so. I ran. I sprinted across the lot, jumped into my cab, jammed the rusted key into the ignition flange, and this time it turned. The engine roared to life. I slammed it into gear and tore out of there, tires screaming against the pavement. When I glanced at the rearview mirror, I saw the rest stop fading into darkness behind me. Just before the lights went out completely, I saw something standing by the bathroom door. Not a man. Not exactly. Just a figure made of light and shadow watching me leave. I didn't stop driving until the sun came up. By the time I hit Tucson, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely sign the delivery papers. That night, I looked up Rest Stop 23 online. Nothing. No record of it. The rest stops along I-10 jumped from 22 straight to 24. I even called the Texas Department of Transportation. They said there had never been a Rest Stop 23. When I checked my truck the next morning, my own keyring was back in the ignition. The rusted one, the one that said Unit 23, was gone. A few weeks later, I was refueling at a Love's station near Van Horn when another driver, a younger guy, struck up a conversation. He asked if I'd ever heard of a weird rest stop around mile marker 167. Said his buddy had pulled in there 2 nights earlier. Never came back. They found his rig idling in neutral, doors open, lights still on. Inside the bathroom, carved into the mirror, were the words, "Welcome to Rest Stop 23. I don't take that route anymore. Hell, I don't even drive past 22 if I can help it. Some nights, though, when I'm parked at a real rest area, I'll glance at the GPS and see a faint icon flicker just off the highway. No name, no coordinates. Just a small gray square labeled Rest Stop 23. And for reasons I can't explain, I always turn my radio off when I see it. Because sometimes if I don't, I can hear faint voices through the static. One of them sounds like mine, and the other just keeps whispering, "You can leave when someone else stops." Truckers like to say the road doesn't lie. You can feel everything in the seat of your rig. A crosswind, a bad bearing, an extra 50 pounds of freight. That's how I knew something was wrong long before I saw it on the scale. My name's Ricky Holden, and I've been hauling for almost 15 years now. Flatbeds, box trailers, refrigerated. I've pulled just about everything except hazmat. But the load I took out of Waco that summer wasn't like anything I'd ever carried before. It started simple enough. A private contract through a dispatch I'd never worked with before. The email came with no company logo, just a contact number and a pickup location. An old industrial depot on the outskirts of town. The pay was too good for such a short haul. Nearly $2,000 to move 1 crate to Amarillo. Quick run, the dispatcher said. You'll be done before sunrise. Easy money. Or so I thought. When I arrived, the place didn't look like a functioning depot. The front gate hung open, chain rusted, the security booth empty. There were no logos, no trucks, no forklifts. Just a single overhead lamp buzzing against the night sky. A man was waiting near the loading bay. He wore a gray suit that didn't fit right and dark sunglasses at midnight. He didn't give me his name, just handed me a clipboard and said, "Sign here." I skimmed the paperwork, no listed contents, just a shipping ID, RL1197. When I asked what was inside, he smiled too slowly. "Cargo," he said. "Nothing you need to worry about." I laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, but I gotta know if it's fragile or—" "Just drive carefully," he interrupted. That was it. No details, no manifest, no weight declaration. When the forklift brought the crate out, I expected something small. But this thing was huge. About 8 feet long, 5 wide, and heavy enough to make the forklift groan. They bolted it to the center of the trailer and sealed it with a thick padlock. The suit handed me the key and said, "You won't need this." Then he turned, walked back into the dark building, and shut the door behind him. I checked my mirrors a dozen times as I pulled onto the highway. The crate didn't move, didn't rattle, but after about an hour on the road, I noticed something strange. The truck felt heavier. It's hard to explain if you've never driven a rig, but you feel the load. You know how it handles. This one was dragging, even on flat ground. I thought maybe a tire was losing air or I'd misjudged the balance. I stopped at a 24-hour weigh station outside Abilene. The attendant leaned out of the booth, yawning. "You're a bit heavy in the rear, friend," he said. I asked him to run it again. He frowned. "Have you gained weight since the last station?" "I didn't stop anywhere," I said. "Well," he replied, tapping the screen, "you're 600 pounds heavier than your log says you left with." He must have seen the look on my face because he added, "Could be the scale. Happens sometimes. Or maybe you picked up something extra." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, sure." But when I got back on the road, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting behind me. Every bump, every curve, I could feel it, like something inside the crate was settling in. By the time I hit Lubbock, the truck was running hot. The tires on the trailer looked low, like they were straining. The air smelled strange too, not burnt rubber, not oil. Something sweet, almost metallic, like a hospital disinfectant. I pulled over at a rest stop, got out and walked to the trailer. The night was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no cicadas, just that heavy silence that sits wrong in your chest. The crate sat exactly where it should be, but I could see condensation along the metal edges, like cold air was leaking out. When I leaned closer, I heard something, faint, rhythmic breathing. I froze, trying to convince myself it was air shifting through the trailer vents, but it wasn't. It was slow, steady, unmistakably human. I climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and sat there for maybe 10 minutes trying to calm down. I told myself it was refrigeration, some temperature-controlled shipment I didn't know about. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe someone had locked themselves inside. The key the man gave me was still in my pocket. My hand kept drifting toward it. By the time I reached Amarillo, the back tires were sagging. I could hear them groaning with each rotation. The whole truck felt sluggish, like it was hauling concrete. When I stopped for fuel, I checked the pressure. Fine. But the trailer was breathing, you could hear it. Soft hissing sounds like something inhaling through vents. When I put my hand on the metal, I swear I felt a pulse. Not vibration, an actual pulse like a heartbeat. I called dispatch, trying to sound calm. "Hey, this load's acting weird," I said. "Feels like the weight's changing. Can I get a green light to inspect it?" The guy on the other end didn't even hesitate. "Negative, Ricky, do not open the crate. Deliver as planned. You're almost there." Almost there? I still had 80 miles to go. "Listen," I said, lowering my voice. "This isn't normal freight. If something's alive in there—" "Driver," he interrupted, his tone suddenly sharp. "You open that crate and your contract is void. You'll forfeit payment and liability coverage. Do you understand?" The line clicked dead. By the time I got back on the road, the smell had changed again. Thicker, sour. Like hot metal mixed with decay. My chest hurt from how heavy the air felt in the cab. Around 3 a.m., I pulled onto a deserted stretch outside Amarillo and made my choice. I parked on the shoulder, grabbed a crowbar, and walked to the trailer. The night was still, except for the faint creaking of metal expanding in the heat. The crate looked bigger somehow, like it had swollen. Condensation dripped down the sides, pooling at my boots. When I touched the padlock, it was ice cold. My fingertips stung from the temperature. I hesitated. The voice in my head screamed not to do it, but curiosity and fear are close cousins. I unlocked it. The latch released with a sharp click, followed by a deep sigh, like the sound a freezer makes when you open it after a long time. I grabbed the edge and pulled. Inside was pitch black. I expected maybe plastic packaging or dry ice. But the air that came out was alive, it moved. Thick, wet, and heavy, and like fog that breathed. My flashlight beam barely cut through it. The inside looked endless. Darker than it should have been for a space that size. The smell hit next. Cold rot and something electric like ozone. Then I heard movement. Something shifted inside. A scraping sound, slow and deliberate, followed by a low exhale. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer, just a whisper that wasn't made by wind. Empty. No, this sound wasn't from my throat. It was in the air itself, vibrating through the fog. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. My flashlight flickered, sputtered, then went out completely. I could still hear it, not words this time, just breathing. Faster now, closer. When I turned to run, the crate door slammed shut behind me. The padlock clanged into place on its own. I don't remember much after that. I think I blacked out on the ground beside the truck. When I woke, the sun was up, the road was empty, and my trailer doors were wide open. The crate was gone. The only thing left inside was a patch of frost on the floor and a single set of footprints. Deep, heavy, leading to the ramp, then stopping midair. I drove straight back to Waco. But the depot wasn't there anymore. The address led to an overgrown lot with a rusted fence and a for sale sign that looked 20 years old. No trace of the man. No trace of Red Lake Research Division. A week later, I got a call from the state police. They'd found my truck abandoned on a farm road near the Oklahoma border. The trailer was empty, except for the crate. It had been found open, half collapsed, with a single phrase burned into the wood from the inside. "Thank you for the ride." They asked me if I'd written it. I told them no. They didn't believe me. I don't drive long hauls anymore. Not since that night. I work local routes now. Groceries, dry goods, nothing sealed. Nothing I can't see with my own eyes. But sometimes, when I'm sitting in traffic or idling at a dock, I'll feel it, a faint shift in the weight of the truck, like something's breathing behind me. And every now and then, when I stop at a weigh station, the scale will flash something impossible, a few 100 pounds heavier than when I left. The attendants just shrug, saying it's probably a calibration issue. But I know better. Some cargo never really leaves you. If you drive long enough, you start hearing stories. Not the kind you find in newspapers or dispatch logs. The kind whispered over coffee at truck stops around 3 a.m. when the parking lot's gone quiet and nobody's quite sure what's real anymore. Every region's got its own. The black dog that runs drivers off the road. The man in the median. The diner that only appears when it rains. But down here in West Texas, the one we talk about is called the Phantom Convoy. You hear it first as a rumor. 3 rigs that travel together in perfect formation. No engines, no sound. Just headlights floating through the dark like lanterns on an invisible chain. If you see them, the old-timers say, don't follow. Don't even look too long, because they're not on your road. They're on theirs. The first time I heard about it was from Eddie Morales, a driver I used to team with before he went solo. Eddie was one of those guys who didn't scare easy. Vietnam vet, 40 years on the road, the type who'd seen everything twice and laughed about it. But the night he told me this story, he didn't laugh once. We were parked behind a diner outside of Las Cruces, eating cold fries in the cab. It was one of those nights where the desert air feels too still, like even the wind doesn't want to move. I asked him about the strangest thing he'd seen out there. He went quiet for a minute, then said, "Have you ever heard of the convoy that isn't there?" He told me it happened about 10 years earlier, somewhere along Highway 285 near Carlsbad. He was hauling dry freight, construction materials, nothing fancy, when he saw a glow in his mirrors. Not just one pair of lights, 3. They were a few miles behind him at first, but they stayed perfectly aligned, same distance apart, moving at the same exact speed. No CB chatter, no other traffic on the radar. And then, all at once, they were closer. He said the lights just jumped forward like time skipped. 3 rigs side by side now, each running bright high beams but no sound. Eddie swore he could see dust rising under their tires, except the tires weren't turning. He thought it was a trick of the heat at first, or maybe fatigue. But he was wide awake, window cracked, the dry air biting his face. He pulled onto Channel 19. "Breaker 19, you boys running tandem out here?" Static, he tried again. Nothing. Then faintly through the hiss, "Stay in line." He froze. It wasn't a voice he recognized. It didn't even sound human. More like multiple voices overlapping, each one half a second behind the other. He reached for the dial, but the radio snapped off on its own. The 3 rigs drifted ahead, maintaining that perfect formation. He decided to follow. He said it wasn't curiosity, it was instinct, like something was pulling him forward. The air felt charged like static before a storm. His dashboard lights dimmed, then flickered. He followed for miles, watching their taillights glide over the horizon. Then his GPS glitched. The map went blank. Instead of a route, it just showed one word: stay. He slowed down, heart pounding. "Hell with this," he muttered, and reached to turn around. But when he looked back at the road behind him, it was gone. No asphalt. No painted lines. Just sand. He hit the brakes hard. The truck shuddered, tires grinding against gravel until it came to a stop. When he stepped out, he realized there was no sound. Not the engine, not the wind, not even the crunch of his boots on the ground. And those 3 rigs? Still there, a few 100 feet ahead, idling in silence. He could see them clearly now. Plain white trailers, no company logos. Their lights flickered like old bulbs about to die. Then the middle one's headlights blinked off. When they came back on, the other two were gone. Eddie said he stood there staring until something inside the cab moved. He heard the faint click of the CB mic, then his own voice, his actual voice, coming through the speaker. "Stay in line." He backed away slowly. "Nope," he whispered, shaking his head. "Nope, nope, nope." Then the headlights from the remaining rig started turning, slow and deliberate, like they were focusing on him. He climbed back into his cab and threw it into reverse, but the wheels spun like the sand had turned to ice. The air inside his truck went freezing cold. Frost formed on the glass. Through the windshield, he could see movement in the other cab. Someone, or something, was in the driver's seat. At first, he thought it was a reflection. Then he realized what he was looking at. It was him, same jacket, same cap, same scar on the cheek, except the other Eddie wasn't moving right. His face was pale, eyes wide and unblinking, mouth frozen open like he was mid-scream. The next thing he remembered was waking up at sunrise, parked miles off the highway. The truck was covered in dust, like it had been sitting there for days. The engine was dead. The CB radio was still on, hissing softly. When he touched the mic, it repeated the same phrase in his own voice. "Stay in line." Over and over. That was the last long-haul job Eddie ever took. He switched to local runs after that, said he couldn't drive nights anymore. I didn't blame him. The story got around, of course. Other truckers started claiming they'd seen the convoy too. 3 sets of lights, no sound, always between 2:45 and 3:15 a.m. Some said if you pull over and turn off your lights, they'll pass you without noticing. But if you follow, you'll never get back on the highway. I didn't believe it. Not really. Until last year, I was hauling a load of concrete pipes up through Pecos County. Empty desert for miles. My clock said 2:57 a.m. I hadn't thought about Eddie's story in years. Then in my mirrors, I saw them. 3 headlights. Perfect formation. No sound. I told myself it was a coincidence, maybe a military convoy or another fleet run. But when I turned off my radio, the static didn't stop. It was whispering. "Stay in line." I pulled over, shaking. The lights glided past me, silent, slow, almost graceful. I swear I could feel the vibration of something heavy moving through the air. And for just a second, I saw the license plate on the last trailer. TX285 ED Eddie's old route number. I never told anyone that part. But about 3 months later, I got a call from another driver I knew. Terry, a young guy running nights out of Odessa. He'd heard the story too. Joked that he was gonna find the ghosts. He didn't come back from that run. They found his rig 40 miles off-road, half buried in sand, headlights still burning. His dashcam footage stopped at 2:59 a.m. The last thing the audio caught was a low hum and a voice whispering, "Good job, driver. Stay in line." These days, when I run nights, I keep my eyes on the road and my mirrors turn just enough to see what's behind me. But never for long. Sometimes the static will creep in on Channel 19, whispering like a memory you can't quite kill. And if I'm driving through West Texas after midnight and the radio hisses louder than it should, I don't touch it. I just slow down, pull over, and wait for the lights to pass. Because I know what happens if you follow. You don't end up ahead. You end up in the line. Every trucker knows one thing for sure. When that fuel light comes on in the middle of nowhere, you stop at the first chance you get. Doesn't matter what time it is or how sketchy the place looks. You stop. That's exactly what Maria Alvarez told herself that night. She'd been driving since dawn, hauling medical equipment from Dallas to Tucson, a long stretch through West Texas that most drivers hate. Miles of flat nothing, a sky too big to look at for too long, no cell signal for hours. Her rig was running low, the fuel gauge blinking red. She hadn't seen a gas station or rest stop in 50 miles. Then, just as she started to worry she'd have to sleep on the shoulder, a flicker of light appeared up ahead, a neon sign glowing weakly through the desert dark. It said one word, "Eat." It didn't look like much. Just a tiny diner squatting beside 2 old fuel pumps, the kind with spinning dials instead of digital screens. The parking lot was cracked and weedy, the kind of place that should have been closed years ago. But the windows were lit, and she could see silhouettes inside. A waitress moving between tables, people sitting in booths. She sighed in relief. Finally, Maria pulled up beside the pumps, killed the engine, and stepped out into the dry heat. The night air smelled faintly of gasoline and dust. There wasn't another vehicle in sight. No other rigs. No cars, just the sound of her cooling engine ticking in the quiet. She swiped her card at the pump, but the screen didn't respond. That's when she noticed something odd. The price per gallon read 0.00 hours. Her brow furrowed. Probably broken, she thought. The diner must handle payment inside. The bell over the door jingled as she stepped in. The place was full. Or at least, it looked full. Every booth had someone sitting in it. Men, women, even a couple of kids, all perfectly still. At first, she thought they were just tired travelers caught in that 1,000-yard stare after too many hours on the road. But then she noticed the smell, not food. Not coffee, just dust, thick, stale dust that clung to the back of her throat. "Hello?" she called softly. "Is the kitchen still open?" No one answered. She took another step in, her boots squeaking on the linoleum. The jukebox in the corner was glowing, but the same song looped faintly under the static. Something old, maybe Patsy Cline, warped and stretched like a dying cassette tape. Then she saw the waitress. The woman stood behind the counter, smiling. Her uniform was faded pink, her name tag cracked but legible. Linda. Her lipstick was too red, her teeth too white. "Coffee?" Linda asked, voice bright and hollow. "You're just in time," Maria blinked. Yeah, sure. I just need to pay for fuel." "Of course," Linda said, still smiling. She turned, picked up a coffee pot and poured into a mug that was already full. The liquid splashed over the rim, running down her wrist. She didn't flinch. Maria stepped closer. "Ma'am, your coffee." Linda looked up. Her smile widened too far, stretching the skin around her mouth. "Just in time," she repeated. Maria backed away, her heart starting to race. She glanced toward the booths and froze. The people sitting there hadn't moved since she entered. Their forks were raised halfway to their mouths. Their eyes were open but glassy and gray like marble. She whispered, "Oh my God." The air grew heavy. The lights above began to hum louder, flickering in a slow rhythm like breathing. When she turned toward the door, something cold brushed her arm. A draft or a hand, she couldn't tell. Her instinct kicked in. She bolted, but when she shoved through the front door, she didn't step outside. She stepped into another diner. Same booths, same faces, same smell. Only this time, the people at the tables had turned their heads toward her, every single one of them. Their eyes were still gray, but now they were watching her. Linda was standing behind the counter again, smiling, holding that same dripping coffee pot. "Coffee?" she asked. "You're just in time." Maria's breath hitched. She stumbled backward, knocking over a stool. It hit the floor with a dull thud, not wood against tile, but something softer like sand. She looked down. The floor beneath her was rippling, grainy. It wasn't tile anymore. It was dust. She turned to run again, but the door she'd come through was gone. Just a blank wall, the paint bubbling under the flickering light. "Where's my truck?" she shouted. Linda's smile didn't falter. "Right where you left it." Maria ran to the window. Outside, the parking lot was full now. Dozens of trucks and cars, all coated in thick dust. Their engines were running, faintly rumbling, exhaust curling into the night. One of them looked familiar. Her rig. She pressed her hand to the glass. "No," she whispered. The driver's seat wasn't empty. Someone was sitting there. It was her. Maria stumbled back, her pulse pounding in her ears. "Okay," she muttered to herself. "I'm dreaming. This is a dream." But then she heard it, the faint metallic tick-tick-tick of her engine cooling coming from somewhere inside the diner. She turned toward the sound. Behind the counter, a door stood slightly open. A faint blue light spilled out. She shouldn't have looked. She knew that. But she did anyway. The back room wasn't a kitchen. It wasn't even a room. It was a garage. Dozens of trucks sat in rows, headlights dim, engines humming softly. Their surfaces were coated in dust, but their seats were empty. The smell of fuel filled the air, sharp and dizzying. A single neon sign flickered on the far wall. "Fuel Line Diner." And under it, written in grease on the wall, was a list of names. Some were faded almost to nothing. Others were recent, black and wet-looking. At the very bottom, she saw it, Maria A. The lights flickered again. From somewhere deep in the garage came a voice. Faint, distant, echoing through the humming engines. "You're just in time." Maria ran for the door, but when she burst back into the diner, it wasn't the same one. The booths were empty now. The jukebox was dark. Only Linda stood there, wiping the same counter, humming tunelessly under her breath. Maria screamed, "Let me out!" Linda looked up, eyes glowing faintly under the neon. "Coffee?" she said again. Maria grabbed a chair and threw it at the window. It hit and shattered into dust. The glass didn't even crack. She tried the door again, locked, and then she noticed something new. A faint vibration through the floor. Engines. Outside, one by one, the truck's headlights blinked on. She pressed her face to the window, her breath fogging the glass. The trucks were idling in the lot now, all facing the diner. Their exhaust curled upward, forming a low gray fog. And through that fog, she could see movement in the driver's seats. People, figures, climbing in. Some of them looked old and mummified, their skin gray and tight. Others looked fresh, and one of them looked exactly like her. She screamed and turned back to Linda. "What do you want from me?" Linda tilted her head. "We all have to keep the line running." "What line?" Linda smiled wider, the corners of her mouth splitting, just enough to show something too white. Beneath her gums, the fuel line. Maria grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a metal napkin holder, and hurled it at the waitress. It hit her square in the chest and she didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. The object just sank into her like she was made of smoke. The jukebox turned itself on again. The same warped song began to play, Patsy Cline, slow and broken. "I Go Out Walking." After midnight, the lights dimmed. Maria pressed herself against the counter, shaking. From outside, a horn honked, deep, echoing, mechanical. Then another, and another. It sounded like an entire convoy calling to her. Linda looked toward the sound, then back at Maria. "Your rig's waiting," she said softly. "You should get going. Wouldn't want to run out of gas." The next thing Maria remembered was standing in the driver's seat of her truck. The cab was clean, cool, her coffee cup full again. The fuel gauge blinked full. For a few minutes she thought she'd imagined the whole thing. Then she noticed her hands. They were coated in fine gray dust. Maria never made it to Tucson. Her dispatcher logged her fuel stop at 2:14 a.m., but after that her GPS went dark. 2 weeks later, a state trooper found her rig parked behind an abandoned diner off an unmarked exit. Engines still idling. The fuel gauge read full. The driver's seat was empty. Inside the diner there were no bodies. No waitress. No customers. Just dust. And carved into the counter under a layer of grime, 3 words burned deep into the wood. "You're just in time." They say Fuel Line Diner doesn't exist on any map. No address. No records. But if you're driving late at night, half out of gas, and you see that flickering neon sign that says "Eat," keep going, because when you stop there, you never really leave. You just get added to the line. Every trucking company has that one run they don't talk about, the one nobody admits exists. For Cormac Freight, that was run 66, no manifest, no paperwork, no destination. It wasn't listed in the system, and the dispatchers pretended not to know what you were talking about if you asked. But every so often, one of the senior drivers would disappear for a night, and when they came back, they'd just say, "Don't take it. Not worth it." No one ever said why. Tom Jensen didn't believe in ghost stories. He'd been driving since his 20s, 15 years without a single accident. He wasn't afraid of much except missing a paycheck. And when the company quietly offered him an under-the-table bonus for one special run, he didn't think twice. They called it Run Kiskasetic 6. He laughed. "Cute number. Are you trying to scare me?" The dispatcher didn't laugh. "Pick up at midnight. Waco Depot. Ask for the black crate." The depot was empty when he arrived, just one overhead light buzzing like a fly. A man in a dark coat stood waiting beside a forklift smoking. His face was shadowed by the brim of his cap. "You Jensen?" the man asked. "Yeah. Sign here." He handed over a clipboard. No description, no weight, no recipient. Just the letters Cormac Internal stamped in red. The man flicked his cigarette into the dark and nodded toward the bay. They loaded a single crate. Long, narrow, matte black. It looked like a coffin but heavier. The kind of heavy that seemed impossible for its size. Stamped in white block letters, Handle with care. Tom backed his rig out of the lot, engine rumbling low. The man didn't wave. By the time he hit the highway, the depot lights were gone behind him, like they'd shut off the second he left. The route didn't make sense. His GPS just read, destination unknown. He figured it was some new encryption system for private contracts. Still, the longer he drove, the stranger things felt. The air in the cab got cold. Not the kind of cold from the AC, this was bone deep in the smell. Like old dust and wet concrete, he turned on the CB, hoping to hear another voice. Channel 19 was empty, just static. Around 2 a.m., his headlights caught something in the mirrors, movement in the trailer. At first he thought it was a trick of the light, but then he saw the shadows shift. Something inside the trailer was moving. He told himself it was the load settling. Maybe the straps had come loose, but his gut knew better. He drove another 20 miles trying to ignore it. Then came the sound. A faint scraping, slow, deliberate, something dragging metal against metal. He pulled over onto the shoulder, heart hammering, and climbed out with his flashlight. The night was silent. No cars, no wind. Just that endless stretch of highway, black as ink. He walked to the back of the trailer, light trembling in his hand. The doors were closed. The lock was still intact. He pressed his ear against the metal. From inside came a soft, rhythmic sound. Tap. 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 Then silence, he whispered to himself. It's just settling. Just the straps, and then something knocked back 3 times. Tap, 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 right where his ear had been. He stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. The beam rolled across the pavement, landing on the letters painted across the crate inside. Handle with care. Tom swallowed hard, grabbed the latch and unlocked the doors. They creaked open, slow and heavy. The inside was pitch black. He aimed the flashlight inside. The crate sat dead center, motionless. Frost clung to the edges like it had been refrigerated. The metal on the floor was slick with condensation. Then came another sound. Softer this time, from inside the crate itself. A whisper. Tom. He froze. The beam of his flashlight shook violently. Who's in there? He shouted. You need help? The whisper came again, closer now, like a voice slipping through a crack. You brought me home. Tom's stomach dropped. What? Thank you for bringing me home. The flashlight flickered. The air grew colder, so cold his breath fogged in front of him. The crate's lid shifted. Not much, just an inch, enough for a wisp of dust to escape. And that dust moved. It curled upward like smoke, but thicker, almost alive. It spread along the floor, tendrils reaching toward his boots. He stepped back, but it followed, slithering over the metal like it had purpose. When the first tendril brushed his leg, it burned. He screamed and ran for the cab. Throwing himself inside and slamming the door, he jammed the gear into drive, tires squealing as he tore down the highway. In the mirrors, he saw the trailer shaking, violently. The radio crackled to life. Run's almost done, Tom, said a voice. You're doing great, he grabbed the mic. Who is this? What the hell did you people give me? The voice didn't answer. Just static, then faintly. Stay en route. Keep driving. The GPS, still blank moments ago, suddenly lit up with a glowing line that stretched straight through the desert. No towns, no exits. He drove for miles, the shaking behind him growing worse. Then it stopped. Complete silence. Tom exhaled shakily. Okay, maybe it's over. Then from the CB, it's not over. The headlights flickered. The engine sputtered, then roared back to life, louder than before. The entire dashboard glowed red for a moment, gauges spinning wildly. He smelled smoke. When he checked his mirrors, his heart stopped. The back doors of the trailer were open, swinging wide in the wind, and something was climbing out. A shadowy shape, tall and narrow, dragging itself across the frame. Its movements were jerky, like someone learning how to walk again. Tom slammed on the brakes, but the rig didn't slow. He could feel something crawling along the roof of the cab now. Heavy, deliberate steps. He grabbed the mic again. Dispatch! What's happening? No answer. Then a whisper, soft as dust. Delivery complete. The headlights exploded, shattering from the inside out. The windshield cracked. The air went thick, dry, suffocating. Tom fought the wheel, but it wouldn't turn. The steering locked as if something else had control. He felt a hand, cold and dry as sandpaper, slide across the back of his neck. He screamed. The last thing he saw before the truck hit the guardrail was the crate, now empty, sitting in the middle of the road behind him. When the state police found the truck the next morning, it was half melted, the engine fused to the pavement. The cab was empty. Inside the trailer, the black crate sat open. Nobody, no blood, just a single line burned into the metal floor. "Thank you for bringing me home." Cormac Freight denied the shipment ever existed. Run number 666 was never logged in their records. The dispatcher who assigned it quit the next day and vanished without a trace. But every year since, on Halloween night around midnight, dispatch says the same thing happens. A red light flickers on one of the old, disconnected CB channels, the one marked 666. And through the static, a man's voice whispers, "Delivery complete." Some drivers think it's a prank. Others say Tom's still out there, hauling that same load over and over, trying to finish the route that never ends. But most of us know better. Every company has one route that isn't supposed to exist. And when you've been on the road long enough, you learn to skip the ones that don't show up on the manifest, because sometimes the run doesn't end when you park. Sometimes it's still going somewhere else.